Let's journey back in time. Picture it, the city of Jerusalem, shrouded in the silence of a deep night. The bustling markets are long closed, the pilgrims are asleep, and the only light comes from the moon carving long, dark shadows into the stone streets. The world is still. But right here, in this quiet, in this darkness, one of the most significant conversations in all of human history is about to take place. Not in a sun-drenched temple courtyard, not in front of a cheering crowd, but in secret. It's a meeting of two minds, two completely different worlds, and it's a conversation that will forever change what it means to be truly alive.
In this question, well, this gets right to the heart of everything, doesn't it? It's a paradox that so many of us can feel deep in our bones. We work hard, we achieve our goals, we build these impressive lives for ourselves. And yet, sometimes, in the quiet moments, after all the noise of the day has died down, there's this emptiness, a question that just hangs in the air. This is the story of a man who was, by every possible measure, a success. He had climbed to the very top of his world, only to realize the view from the summit just wasn't enough. And so, he decided to risk it all for a secret meeting with someone he thought might finally have a real answer.
So our story begins with this visitor. His name is Nicodemus, and he doesn't arrive announced by trumpets or surrounded by followers. No, he comes wrapped in the secrecy of the night. You see, his public life was one of immense respect and authority, but his inner world, his soul, was in a quiet turmoil. He was wrestling with this deep, unsettling feeling that something was missing. He was starting to see that all his accomplishments, all his knowledge, and all his religious piety couldn't give him the one thing he was beginning to realize he desperately needed.
Now, to really feel the gravity of the secret meeting, you have to understand who Nicodemus was. This was not just some random guy. First, he was a Pharisee. That means he was part of the religious elite, the most respected, most devout, most meticulously observant group in all of Judaism. He was also a member of the Sanhedrin, the Jewish Supreme Court. Think of it as a combination of the Supreme Court and the Senate, giving him incredible political power. And maybe most importantly, he was known as the teacher of Israel. Not a teacher, the teacher. People looked to him for answers. He was brilliant, a master of the law. So you've got religious authority, political power, and intellectual reverence all in one man. He comes to Jesus and he starts with respect. "Rabbi, we know you're a teacher who has come from God, because no one could do the miracles you're doing if God wasn't with him." His sharp mind had already connected the dots. He saw the evidence, but his heart was still looking for an answer to a question he didn't even know how to put into words.
So, why come at night? Well, on a purely practical level, he had to. For a man of his stature, a leader among the very people who were becoming deeply suspicious of Jesus, being seen with this radical teacher from Nazareth, it would have been career suicide. Socially and politically, it was a huge risk. But in the Gospel of John, there's always something deeper going on. Light and darkness are more than just the time of day. They're spiritual realities. And the deep irony here is that Nicodemus, this brilliant teacher, this shining light of Israel, was living in spiritual darkness. He knew the scriptures by heart, he could debate the finest points of the law, but he couldn't see. He was a soul walking through shadows, drawn by an irresistible pull toward the only source of true light he had ever seen.
Nicodemus shows up ready for a sophisticated, intellectual discussion. He opens with a compliment, a respectful acknowledgement of Jesus' authority. He's setting the stage for a debate between two great minds. But Jesus just doesn't play that game. He cuts right through the formalities, he looks past the man's towering reputation, and he speaks directly to that hidden void in his soul. He addresses the need Nicodemus couldn't even name. And he doesn't offer an argument, he offers a riddle that is about to completely shatter everything Nicodemus thought he knew.
And boom, there it is. That one sentence is a wrecking ball to Nicodemus's entire existence. Think about it. His whole life, his entire religious worldview was built on a foundation of heritage, discipline, knowledge, and perfect rule-keeping. It was this magnificent structure of piety that he had spent his life constructing. He was an absolute expert at trying harder. And in one sentence, Jesus basically says, none of that can get you in. Your entire building is on the wrong foundation. You don't need a remodel, you need a demolition. You have to start completely over. For a man who had spent decades building his spiritual resume, this wasn't just confusing, it was profoundly offensive.
You can almost hear the gears in his brilliant mind grinding to a halt, the utter bewilderment in his voice. This is Israel's teacher, a master of theology, and his mind immediately goes to the most literal, physical, and honestly absurd interpretation possible. He's completely lost. Now, his question isn't silly, it's incredibly revealing. It shows this massive canyon between his earthly, logical way of thinking and the spiritual reality Jesus is talking about. He just has no mental box to put this in. It proves a profound point. Even the most brilliant human mind, left to its own devices, cannot grasp the things of God.
And this is where the key to the riddle starts to turn. It all hinges on a single, brilliant Greek word. The word Jesus uses is anothen, and it has this amazing double meaning. Nicodemus hears it as again, which of course leads to his very logical, very physical question about his mother's womb. But the primary meaning Jesus intends is from above. See, he's not talking about repeating our first earthly birth. He's talking about a second, totally different kind of birth, one that doesn't start here on earth, but one that originates in heaven. It's a supernatural act of God, not a natural process we can figure out.
So Jesus breaks it down for him. He says, flesh gives birth to flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to spirit. It's so simple, but it's so deep. Our physical birth from our parents gives us our physical life. It's an amazing gift, but it's an earthly life. It has an earthly origin, and it has an earthly expiration date. It's tied to this world. But the kingdom of God, that's a spiritual reality. And to even see it, let alone enter it and live in it, you need a spiritual birth. You need a brand new kind of life that comes from a completely different source, the very Spirit of God.
Nicodemus is still just baffled. He asks, how can this be? And Jesus gives him this beautiful, powerful picture. He says, think about the wind, right? You can't see the wind itself. You can't schedule a meeting with it. You can't tell it where to go or capture it in a jar. It's this sovereign, powerful, invisible force. And yet you have absolutely no doubt that it's real. You see its effect in the rustling leaves. You hear it whisper through the tall grass. You feel it on your face. Jesus says that's exactly what it's like for everyone who was born of the Spirit. This new birth isn't some mechanical process we can control. It's the mysterious, powerful, undeniable work of God Himself in a person's soul.
Okay, so this radical teaching about being born from above, it wasn't just some private lesson for Nicodemus. It was actually the climax of a much larger story, a divinely planned out drama. And to really get the full impact, we need to pull the camera back for just a moment, away from this quiet room, and listen for an echo coming from the wilderness. It's the voice of the man who prepared the way for this very moment.
You see, right around this same time, the incredibly popular ministry of John the Baptist was starting to shrink as more and more people flocked to hear Jesus. John's own followers were getting a little worried, maybe even a bit jealous. They came to him and said, hey, that guy you baptized, everybody's going to him now. But John's answer shows just how deeply he understood his place in God's great story. It's one of the most incredible statements of humility you'll ever read.
John knew his role exactly. He tells his disciples, I'm not the Messiah. I was just sent ahead of him. And then he uses this amazing analogy. He says, the friend of the bridegroom, the best man, waits and listens for him, and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine, and it is now complete. He didn't see Jesus as a rival. He saw himself as the best man at the wedding. His job wasn't to be the star of the show. His job was to get everyone ready for the groom. So for him, fading into the background wasn't a failure. It was the triumphant completion of his life's mission. It was a perfectly orchestrated handover, clearing the stage for the one who really mattered.
So, back in that room in Jerusalem, Jesus can see that Nicodemus, the master teacher, is still having a hard time being a student. This whole idea of a spiritual birth from above is just too abstract for him. So, to make this heavenly truth solid and real, Jesus reaches way back into Nicodemus's own history, into the sacred scriptures of Israel. He pulls out this really strange, almost shocking story that every Jewish person would have known since childhood. It's a story about a plague of snakes and a very, very strange path to salvation.
So the story from the book of Numbers goes like this. Out in the desert,
The people of Israel were complaining against God and Moses again. As a judgment, God sent these venomous snakes into the camp, and people were being bitten left and right. The poison was moving through their veins, and there was no cure. Death was sweeping through the camp. It was a terrifying, completely hopeless scene. Finally, in their desperation, they confessed their sin. And God's solution was bizarre. He didn't just snap his fingers and make the snakes disappear. He didn't give them an antidote. He told Moses to forge a serpent out of bronze, the very image of the thing that was killing them, and to lift it high on a pole in the middle of the camp. And here was the promise. Anyone who had been bitten, no matter how close to death they were, if they would simply look at that bronze serpent, they would live. They didn't have to climb the pole. They didn't have to offer a sacrifice. They just had to look.
This ancient story, this dusty old tale from the wilderness, is about to become the very key that unlocks this whole mystery for Nicodemus and for all of us. This is the moment where an old story is about to explode with brand new meaning. It's where we see heaven's radical, totally unexpected answer for a world dying from the venom of sin. This isn't about religion. This is about the intrusion of grace.
Jesus looks right at Nicodemus and makes this jaw-dropping connection. He says, just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up. And you can just imagine the puzzle pieces starting to slam into place in Nicodemus's mind. The bronze serpent, it was an image of the very curse that was killing them. And when it was lifted up, it became their source of life. Jesus is saying, that's me. I, the Son of Man, am also going to be lifted up on a cross. He's saying that he will become the curse for us, taking the poison of sin onto himself. And by being lifted up in judgment, he will become the one and only source of our salvation.
And then Jesus says it, the single most famous, most powerful sentence ever spoken, the absolute heart of this midnight conversation, and the core of the entire Christian faith. He explains the why behind this shocking plan. The reason wasn't anger or duty. The reason was love. For God so loved the world, not a perfect world, not a deserving world, but a broken, rebellious, snake-bitten world. And this love wasn't just a feeling, it was an action, that he gave his one and only Son. It was the most precious gift, given at the highest possible cost. And the promise is for whoever believes. It's a completely open invitation. The only requirement is to look, to trust. And the result is a choice between two destinies, to perish in our spiritual death or to have eternal life, a new kind of life, a life from above that starts the moment we believe and never, ever ends.
This is what we mean when we talk about the intrusion of grace. You see, pretty much every religion that humanity has ever come up with is basically about us trying to build a ladder to God. We try to be good enough or smart enough or spiritual enough to climb our way out of the mess we're in. But this verse, John 3:16, it completely flips the script. It's not about our desperate climb up, it's about God's loving rescue mission down. It's a love that doesn't wait for us to clean ourselves up, it comes right into our wilderness, right into our camp full of serpents, and provides the way out. And our only part in this epic rescue is to do what those ancient Israelites did. Just look. Look away from ourselves and our own efforts, and look to him in faith.
But this incredible, almost too good to be true offer of grace, it creates a necessary consequence. It forces a verdict. Think about it. When you flip a switch and turn on a bright light in a dark room, it doesn't just illuminate the space. It also reveals everything that was hiding in the shadows, the dust, the mess. And that revelation forces a choice on everyone in the room.
The Bible is absolutely crystal clear on this. God's purpose for sending Jesus wasn't to condemn the world, it was to save it. He came as a rescuer, not a judge. The mission was one of pure redemption. But then we run into the tragic reality of our human choice. Jesus says, and this is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people loved darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. So the judgment isn't something God angrily imposes on people, it's something we choose for ourselves by default every time we see the light and decide to run back into the shadows.
And this is such a critical point. It gets right to the root of everything. The ultimate reason for condemnation isn't our long list of wrongdoings. Those are the symptoms. Those are the snake bites. The ultimate final sin is seeing the cure, the bronze serpent, lifted up for us and choosing to turn away. It's hearing this free offer of life and deciding we prefer the darkness. It's refusing the one and only rescue that God's incredible love has provided. It's loving the darkness more than the light.
And so that secret meeting ends, but the question just hangs in the air, doesn't it? It echoes from that dark night in Jerusalem all the way down through the centuries to us, right here, right now. Just like Nicodemus, every single one of us, at some point, finds ourselves in the darkness of our own questions, our own doubts, our own failures and fears. The light has come into the world. The way to a new life, a life from above, has been made perfectly clear. The rescue has been offered, and now the choice is ours. In the darkness, which way do we turn?